Now that we are on to set two, I'm just going to give some quick guidance on things that are a little different in these sets. So we still have our history and listening that we've been doing in previous sets and will continue to do. And then we're still doing long tone hinges, same expectations and focuses as set one. And for our full ensemble, a couple things to mention with this. Still wanting to sing and still wanting to give longer notes direction with forte piano crescendos and just focusing on those things that aren't necessarily written in the music. And I also want to note that it's going to be important in the play along track for the wind players. There is a mention of this note here on the end of one in these phrases being ghosted. And we want to focus on ghosting those as opposed to just always accenting the ands. A general rule of thumb I give my students, and I tell them there are exceptions to this, but a general guidance is that when you have an and in a set of eighth notes and it's lower than the ones around it, generally it sounds better and is more in line with the articulation to ghost that than to accent it. And so they can practice doing that with those notes and trying to find those in other places of their music. With the scales, we're still numbering. Now we're just working on altering. So what does it mean to flat the three? If my note's already sharp and I flat it, okay, how do I get to a natural? And just making sure they understand those elements of it. And the transcription is a small one measure idea from Louis' solo that is what is also the listening for this set. And we want to really just try to focus on the note choice and the rhythm and helping the kids understand when we say the word lick, we're kind of talking about these little musical ideas that we can get from these transcriptions. And it's going to be an E flat, and I ask the kids to then put it into B flat so that they can use that later on in the set. And our improv then is going to be over a B flat blues, which is why we're asking them to transpose this to the key of B flat to use that. Also looking at transposing the melody from C Jam Blues on set one as another idea for soloing, just to give them some ideas, some note choices, using the blues scale up above. I know sometimes people have hesitation with the blues scale, but it can give students some simple notes to choose from. And they have their play along here so they can play with that backing track to practice. Then for our rhythm section, down here we are adding roots to these voicings for the piano and the vibes, guitar, we'll get to that in a minute. But we're still using the thirds and sevenths, and we're just adding the root. And while this is not necessarily typical for actual performance because the bass player is playing these, it's good for the students to hear that motion as it correlates to the bass line, not just the chords, the third and seventh of the chords by themselves. And then for the full ensemble, same thing. We're playing the melody and comping. Same for the rest of the set, giving them the information they need to just give simple comping with the root to these. We want to distinguish the root separate from these also so that we don't want the students just trying to create kind of almost like stacking thirds, like they're trying to create some kind of block triad or chord that you would use in a more classical setting. So getting them to keep the third and the seventh separate from the root, but including the root if they want to hear that motion. And then for the guitar, the only difference is sometimes the guitar has the fifth, and that's just from a functionality on the strings standpoint so that they can stay on similar places on the guitar and strings without having to move all over the place. And so this will be helpful for them, so they have sometimes the fifth instead of just the root, and they will get this as well. In this case, they also have the melody still. And same numbering, same transcription, and then same thing, they're working on comping these chords with that information. And then our bass player is working on playing a two feel, and that's going to be in unison with what the drummer is working on with their two feel as well. So getting them to shift from quarter notes to 1 and 3. Right now keeping it simple just on 1 and 3, not adding anything fancy with eighth notes or anything, but just keeping it simple so they can practice transitioning from straight ahead swing with 4 being the emphasis to moving to 1 and 3 with the two feel. Using the 1 and 5 again, practicing that skill. And then on the full ensemble, they're adding the third of the chord now. So we're wanting them to add that as they walk up and use it to kind of give the lines a little bit more shape and direction as they're comping or as they're walking there with the winds. Same numbering, same transcription, and then giving them just some levels of options for what they can handle with reading chord changes. Just roots and fifths. Can they add thirds into this, and giving them that information to choose what's best for them. And then also maybe try doing some two-feel solos, practicing how to shift in and out of those and making that decision with the drummer. And then for drum set, we have working on eighth notes with this two-feel. Noticing the very subtle difference in this kind of simplistic two-feel where we're just removing the ride cymbal or the ride pattern on 2 and 4. Hi-hat stays on 2 and 4, but we're focusing more on emphasizing on the ride, the 1 into 3. And then they on the full ensemble are working up, setting up the and of 2 in addition to the and of 4. And so same general kind of rhythmic setup that they used for 4. Now they're just placing that on the and of 2, and they have the whole with an and of 2 there, first and of 4, and they have the whole wind melody here they can see and how to accent what they are playing with them. Same thing, wanting to keep our drummers melodically inclined. And then down here, again, working, see if you can put a two-feel behind a soloist. When's it appropriate to put the two-feel behind the soloist? And how does that change maybe the way the soloist approaches their solo, etc.? And that is the general overview of set 2.